Hello, my dear brothers and sisters in Christ. Shalom and greetings to all of you. In today's gospel, we can see Jesus condemning the Pharisees. And he condemns them because they have become so concerned with the external things that they have neglected what is more important: justice, mercy, and faithfulness. And when we read today's gospel, my dear brothers and sisters in Christ, we can see that the gospel speaks directly into some of the conversations that we are having in the church today. You see, there are many conversations that we can see happening in online or amongst the parishioners. There are Catholics who are deeply concerned about tradition. They defend the Latin Mass. They question the modern hymns. They prefer certain forms of liturgy, particular languages. But there's nothing inherently wrong with loving these things. Tradition matters. Our Catholic heritage is precious. We should know where we come from, and we should not casually throw away what previous generation handed to us. But there's a question we must honestly ask: when we defend tradition, are we actually defending the faith, or have we sometimes begun defending our personal preference? You see, consider music. What exactly makes a hymn traditional? Is it the language? Is it the age? Or is it because someone remembers singing it as a child? For example, suppose I write a hymn today and we sing it at Mass, as a young Catholic learns it, teaches it to his children, and 50 years later, an entire parish sings that particular song that I create today. Will it then be traditional? If so, at what point did it become traditional? After 20 years? After 25 years? 100 years? Who decides this? So perhaps the question exposes something important. Tradition is not simply something old. Tradition is something that has been received, lived, handed on, and allowed to become part of the living faith of the church. So, what we call today traditional today was once new. There was a generation for whom those hymns were unfamiliar. So, time has a very strange way of turning yesterday's innovation into tomorrow's tradition, and that should make us humble. And the same applies to language. We can have legitimate conversations about which language best serves the liturgy and the pastoral reality of certain language communities. But our unity does not come from everyone sounding the same. Our unity comes from Christ. The question therefore cannot simply be which language is more traditional. What we should ask is, does this help people encounter Christ? Does it unite the community, or does it allow people to pray? But somewhere along the way, my dear brothers and sisters in Christ, criticism can become condemnation, and condemnation can become our identity. We can become so passionate about correcting the church that we forget to love the church, and this is where Jesus' words become uncomfortable. It's like he's speaking directly to us, saying that you have neglected the weightier matters of the law: justice, mercy, and faithfulness. So imagine if every argument we have about the liturgy had to pass through those three words, justice. Does the way I speak about another Catholic treat them with justice? Mercy. Does my criticism leave room for someone who is sincerely trying to worship God, even if their preference is different from mine? And faithfulness, am I defending Christ and his church, or am I simply defending the version of Catholicism that makes me most comfortable? And perhaps that's another question we need to ask, my dear brothers and sisters in Christ: what are we building? It's easy to win an argument today. It's much more harder to build a church that will still be healthy 100 years from now. And if our children and children's children inherit from us nothing but arguments about which Catholics are traditional, what exactly have we handed them? And if they inherit a church where people are afraid to try anything new because every new expression is immediately condemned, will that strengthen the faith? See, my dear brothers and sisters in Christ, there's a difference between preserving tradition and worshipping the past. The past deserves gratitude. Jesus did not tell us to abandon everything we have received. He told us not to become so obsessed with the outside that we neglect what is happening within. Our church needs Catholics who are faithful enough to preserve what is sacred and to recognize what we can develop, humble enough to learn from others. And 100 years from now, my dear brothers and sisters in Christ, nobody will remember most of our arguments. They will not remember who won the debate over a hymn. They will not remember who shouted the loudest about a language. They will not remember every criticism we posted about the church. But they will inherit the church that our generation leaves behind. So perhaps the question that we can ask is, what kind of church am I helping the next generation to receive? Because tradition is not merely something we protect, tradition is something we hand on. And what we hand on should be more than our preference or our grievance and our condemnations. We should hand them a church that knows how to worship, a church that knows how to listen, a church that knows how to disagree without destroying communion, and a church that welcomes the future without abandoning the faith. And most importantly, my dear brothers and sisters in Christ, we should hand them a church that has not forgotten the words of Christ today: justice, mercy, and faithfulness. This is what will build the church, and perhaps that is the tradition which is worth fighting for. Have a nice day. Thank you, and God bless.